All right. We'll give people just a little bit of time. Just a little bit of time. All right. How's everyone doing? Hopefully well. Hopefully well. Let's get into the cloud news. What do we have this week? I feel like this week was kind of a little light. There's like a bunch of little things from AWS that I felt was worth covering, but none of them are groundbreaking. Yeah. And then we definitely have, I think, two things from AWS or Azure that were pretty cool. And we have some maybe Silicon Valley, the heart of the software industry, news to cover. Definitely interesting there. There is a brand new OS just released that we're also going to cover. And we're gonna change it up a little bit because instead of doing AI after cloud news, we're gonna cover AI first and then cloud news, just to mix it up a little bit. Just to mix it up a little bit. It Russell, I don't even know why you watch these. I appreciate you watching these. You're more on top of the news than I am. It's my job. I get paid handsomely, mostly by you. Yes, we do have some Bay Area news to talk about. That's actually not the only Bay Area news. So there's some other interesting stuff from Meta and Red Hat that we're gonna cover. You're watching Rocket League as well. That's completely fine. I get it. I get it. Rocket League's more important. Did you see our? Wow, Russell. Wow, you're the one that pulled the plug on it all. Nice. To be honest, there's always been free alternatives that I've used, which I kind of feel bad about at this point because like I've never actually paid for it because I have had OneNote um or things like that. And like maybe they're not as good, but like I haven't leveraged them. So like yeah. I'm actually going to be paying so like I'm trying to take a different stance with this. Like so with Ori, I'm actually gonna just pay for an account instead of using the freest. Because I could kind of get away with using just the bare free, but I think I'm going to go to their $30 a month plan. Just because like what they're doing is cool, and so like I don't want to give them a reason to go like closed source or AGPL or whatnot. So yeah, I'm gonna try to do my part a little bit better in the future, especially since I can. Now I realize not everybody can, and that's fine. But I give to like some like okay, so I do some through like I support some through GitHub. So like the Talos project, I actually give to them, and some other open source projects that I really like and want to support. Babylon, and then some individual creators as well. So I have been trying to do my part. All right, well, let's get into the news. let's get into the news. There was only one thing with security that I saw out of this last week that really pertained to software engineers, was this new Linux kernel stack rot privilege escalation. Now, I actually am going to throw this link in there because it has further links. You can click on the CVEs and things like that. But beyond just that, I felt like this was important because like how the stack rot Linux kernel vulnerability happened, it's in the memory management system, and I think it's a really great learning experience. So I would encourage you to go and actually check it out as far as like how memory management at the kernel level. It's a complicated topic. So but that was it for security. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have done the screen changing back and forth. It was a little awkward. So yeah, I didn't see anything else major, and I'm not sure that was major as well. It got a score of 7 if I remember correctly. It required a little bit of your system was already vulnerable to basically get anything really valuable, and it didn't give you execution privileges. It just let you read memory, which I mean it's bad enough as it is, but yeah. All right, so instead of jumping into cloud news, I decided we'd mix it up a little bit and talk about AI news. Now, this first article is something I have said. Now, I didn't find the words from Databricks CTO themselves, but I'm sure that they're out there. I just didn't find them. I didn't have a ton of time to look for them. But OpenAI, others pushing false narratives about LLMs, says Databricks CTO. Now, this is something I have been saying, and it is why I'm working on. It's going to end up like I'm working on the script. It's going to probably end up being like a 45 minute video with a decent number of animations and things like that around what an LLM is and what does GPT even stand for, and some of how I feel like it's hyped beyond its actual capabilities. So I am working on that, and it will be a video in the future, hopefully sooner than later, but I tend to agree with Databricks CTO here, and so I thought that this was an interesting thing to say here. Basically, Databricks argues that OpenAI and other tech firms are pushing this narrative to try to keep a stranglehold on the technology itself, and not and discourage others from entering it. Now, that being said, we can flip over to Stability AI, who says there will be no human programmers in 5 years. Now, if you join me for the AI games, something we're hopefully going to wrap up this Saturday, you'll find out that I'm not sure I believe this, especially since I've used Stability AI's coding, and stability was not one of the words that I would have used for it. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think that they're amazing and that they don't help and that they can't get better in the future. I believe that there's a lot of hyperbole in this. Yeah, let's just talk about like how they don't actually think. So you still need a developer that knows what they want and what they need. So, but we can get into that. So on top of that, OpenAI stated this last week that it is still working to basically combat rogue AIs. Now, again, this system going rogue doesn't even make sense to me with what we have, with what LLMs are, with what GPT is. This doesn't actually make sense to me, and this is where I tend to agree with Databricks. And more likely, Stability AI won't exist in 5 years. So this is news. These are things that released this last week, and this is why I'm covering them. But I am covering them with a thing of I am going to release a video on all of this because, unfortunately, just like with Bitcoin and blockchain, I think people are taking advantage of people that don't understand the technology. And I classically, on my YouTube channel, do not cover simplistic, like from the ground up. And maybe that's my problem. I've covered, stuff that makes that generally considers that you understand what software engineering is and whatnot, and tries to take it to the next level. I'm kind of like trying to shoot for those junior to mid-level engineers and helping them level up to senior engineer, which I know limits my target audience. And I'm going to work on some of these things. So I will be covering more on this in the future. Now, it wasn't all just doom and gloom. I actually saw something pretty cool called Cosmos 2 that Microsoft released. It kind of blindsided me because they've kind of been all in on GPT-2, or GPT 3.5 and GPT-4, which did go GA. GPT-4 did. Is the Cosmos 2. Now, Cosmos 2 is a little bit different than your other LLMs because it's a multi-model LLM, which they tried to bring in basically the ability for LLMs to perceive real-world objects. It did effectively pictures, so they were trying to mix, and we've seen other ones of this, and this was actually a really cool paper that you can go and get the PDF of. So I'm gonna drop this link. Yes, Russell, yes, thank you. That is a fantastic basically way of looking at it. Predictive text is going to replace humans by 2025. The problem is predictive text requires somebody to encourage it to predict something. I don't know why other people aren't seeing this like I see it, but for something to predict, it needs a prompt. And for it to get a prompt, it needs somebody that knows what it's trying to predict. It doesn't just predict random stuff. You have to give it a prompt and you have to know. So even if you said that software engineers won't have to type a tenth of the code that they type because these predictive AIs are going to do it, you still need a software engineer to guide it to what code to write and where to put it and where to deploy it and things like that. So this is where, like, yeah. Anyways, I like how you put it. Thank you for doing that. So anyways, Cosmos 2 was really cool. Microsoft really pushed the publication on this and funded it. So I think this is actually a really cool next step of these large language models where they're actually multi-models. So like you can talk about a picture and things like that, and it has understanding of that. So anyways. On top of this, the last thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about a little open source, which I thought was pretty fantastic. There is this new paper called H2O GPT. So I'm going to link this paper for you all to read. Go get it in PDF form from Cornell University. But this was released by H2O GPT. And H2O GPT is pretty fantastic. So it's an open source GPT under the permissive Apache 2 license, very important. And they do a lot of stuff with fine-tuning large language models, LLMs. So if you were looking at trying to do that, this is a project for you. It has wide support for Linux, Mac OS, Windows, and Docker. Docker seems weird since they say Linux, which would imply a container because that's just the user space, but maybe some people don't know Docker that well. And if that's you, you can check out my YouTube channel. I have a container thing that will explain containers pretty in depth so that you're not confused about it. But anyways, it supports GPUs and is fairly reasonable to train. So they have in their 8-bit, they use 8 gigabytes or 13 gigabytes of GPU memory. And you can even get that down to 6 gigabytes of GPU, which means my 2070 can actually train this because I think it has 8 gigs of memory, which is pretty cool for low memory at a pretty high count. So if you're trying to get into it, there is this. But not only is there this. Now this is in AWS's realm. So we're going to kind of skip to cloud news, and then we're going to come right back. If you're trying to learn large language models, there's this. I'm gonna link this to you guys. But another thing that came out that I saw that's out there for free, if you're trying to understand this a little bit better, is learning the fundamentals of generative AI for real world applications. Now, I haven't taken this class myself. I think I'm going to enroll. It starts today. But it's available for free. For free. So if you're wanting to learn, this might be a good course for you to do. This is something that Amazon themselves worked with somebody else. I forget who they worked with. It's probably in here. So this is AWS. Maybe it's just AWS. But if you're trying to do this, it was deeplearning.ai. AWS in partnership with deeplearning.ai. So anyways, I think that this is pretty cool. Again, I don't know how good it is, but I'm hoping that it's pretty good. Because as I said, AWS was pushing this as like software engineers should take this. So I think I'm going to enroll and see how it goes. All right, and that was it for my AI news. Did you guys see anything else in AI news? Remember to bring your own links if you have something. We'll cover it at the end of the session. And yeah. We'll jump into cloud news. Unless if somebody has something. All right. So, cloud news. What are we talking about? We're going to talk Google Cloud first. We're going to talk about Identity Federation first. We're going to talk about test timeout second in Google Cloud. And that was really it. So, configuring workload identity federation for GitHub Actions and Terraform Cloud. So, not only was it a new feature that was released, but it was a new way of using workload identity federation. So, if you're using this, workload identity federation is basically something that allows you to do this keyless authentication and is pretty good. And they've extended it to use GitHub Actions and Terraform Cloud. So basically, you can use this new federation, this new improved thing with your workload and with your GitHub Actions and Terraform for Google Cloud. So basically, you can extend your one solution to more things if you're using GitHub Actions or Terraform Cloud. I actually think this is huge because a lot of the times, a lot of our complexity comes from where one solution doesn't provide the full solution, and then we patchwork other solutions, and now we have this quilt of other technologies to fill in the gaps. So this would allow you to use Identity Federation now solely if all you had was GitHub Cloud, GitHub Actions, and Terraform Cloud. Pretty nice. I think that's pretty big. The other thing that allows you to do here is now task runs, instead of being capped at 1 hour, you can run up to 24 hours. This is basically pretty awesome. Now, their default is still going to be 10 minutes, but instead of being capped out at 1 hour like they have been, you can run them for up to 24 hours. Now, you will be paying for them. You pay by the minute for these jobs. I believe it's by the minute for the tasks. But if you needed one to run longer than an hour, you can. Now, I'm not sure if I think that there's a good reason to run really long ones. I feel like you might be using like a Kubernetes job at that point, but maybe you don't have Kubernetes, maybe you don't have these other systems. And if that's the case, this might be the simplest solution. And I'm always a fan for use the simplest solution until it's not the simplest solution, and then move on. So that was it for GCP. Did you guys see anything else in GCP? If not, we're moving right on to Microsoft. Microsoft had not a super busy week, but a kind of busy week. So let's talk about it. Cost management updates for June. So throughout June, they had some cost management. We covered some of them. So I'm not going to cover all of them right here today, but I am going to drop this link because it summarizes all of their cost updates. So if you're wanting to understand Azure cost management and all the updates that happen in June that are going to empower you to make the right choices in your Azure cloud and to understand what's costing you what in your cloud and how to reduce costs. Here you go. Now, a lot of this has come in with like, how can we reduce spend in Azure cloud? So it's pretty nice. And yeah, pretty fantastic. All right, what else did Microsoft do? Microsoft Fabric, which is a distributed system platform for packaging, deploying, and managing stateful sets, had a confusing set of releases. If you don't know what I mean, is basically they released Fabric 9.1 before they released Fabric 9.0. Yeah. Anyways, it was a little confusing for me, but what I realized was 9.0 had its 10th release, so it's 9.0.10, and this was 9.0.5. So I don't know why they worded it this way, but it confused the garbage out of me. If you're on Amazon Fabric, Service Fabric, they have releases for the 9.0 and 9.1 releases. So these were mostly bug fixes and quality. There was no features that I saw looking through it, just quality of life and bug fixes for those. So the one thing I did want to talk about was this public preview of Azure Virtual Network Encryption. So let's talk about that. That's not that. This is that. Okay. So with virtual network encryptions, customers can enable encryption of traffic between virtual machines and virtual machine scale set. Now, I don't know for a matter of fact that this is MTLS or mutual TLS, but it is something similar to that with their globally peered virtual networks, allowing you to have encrypted networks between these. Again, I don't know exactly how they're doing that or what technology they're using, but it's giving you that onion defense, that extra layer of defense. All right. I'm going to bring that tweet up off stream. I do try to keep my streams PG-13, so I don't that one's probably breaking the PG-13, so I'm not going to show it, but yeah, it's okay if it has a little bit in it, a little bit maybe if I get those in advance, I will blur out I will censor a little bit, and I'll show them so that we can talk about them. This is horrifying though. They say beyond. I'm paraphrasing here. Let me see if I can't get this. I can get. Okay, here we go. I can get the picture. So we will picture it up, and I will read. I will read. I will read it without the tweet. Yeah. So, all right. A little paraphrasing to keep it PG-13, but here we go. This is the image. Here we go. And it basically, let me get it without my face in there so you can see what it looks like. Here we go. So you have the limit here, the current usage, the peak usage, and you basically have this right here. And basically they say, beyond insane, literally never seen this before in my life. They automatically lowered our quota, causing an incident, and then refused to automatically upgrade it. We have such a litany of issues. I don't know how anybody uses this product. This comes from GCP. Now I can say that I have seen issues with their quotas. So basically what you're seeing here is all of a sudden they enforced a bunch of quotas. This doesn't surprise me from GCP. To be honest, this doesn't surprise me a ton. And the reason it doesn't surprise me is their quotas are notoriously hard to get increased. I don't have a problem with quotas. And actually, AWS has a new thing with quotas, which is, this is kind of interesting. So we'll talk about that because they have a new feature around quotas that actually is helping with quotas. Keeping track of quotas is hard, and actually, if you have a big system, you generally actually make a system that keeps track of them for you. And I've actually done this for AWS specifically, which is horrifying. I know. I know, but it's what we needed to do. When you get to a certain scale, actually, some services you scale by getting multiple AWS accounts. And then you need to keep track of quotas across multiple AWS accounts. And they didn't have a way to do that, which, one second. It was my top news for AWS, which we'll jump right into, is Amazon CloudWatch now supports cross accounts service quotas. So basically, CloudWatch can now monitor this. This like is 3 whole months of my life wasted because AWS now supports it. Supports cross account service quotas, which means you can if you can have multiple accounts, you can actually monitor those quotas across accounts, and it's amazing. Now, that being said, GCP's quotas are insane. I've had issues with them in the past myself, so this does not surprise me that this would happen. This is another reason I think it's so important for you to run with multiple accounts, even if you aren't hitting any of the limits. Sometimes I think it's best to run with multiple accounts, which is kind of a shame, to be honest. Kind of a shame. They threatened to go going on-prem, completely abandonment of cloud. I mean, that's a little bit of a nuclear option. A little bit of a nuclear option there. You know, you just flip that button. But I think, you know, let me put it this way. When you own your machines, you know exactly how much quota you have. You bought it. It's there. It's yours. One of the things people don't realize with clouds is sometimes inventory doesn't exist in the region that they're deployed in. You want another EC2 instance of type X? Maybe they don't have that. And there's no good inventory system. Our clouds surprisingly bad at some of these basic things. And I get being very unhappy. Like, they are rightfully very unhappy. Rightfully very unhappy. 100% rightfully very unhappy. That's horrifying. That's horrifying. I think that is really the beauty of a completely open source cloud. You don't you don't want to be tied to all of your stuff working on GCP. Its services might be nice. You might like them. If you want to move off, you have to rewrite 3/4 of your crap. The amount of engineering costs they're going to incur to move off of GCP is going to be very, very high. Unless if they used none of the services and only ran on GCP's Kubernetes cluster. Even then, you're talking about a bare metal Kubernetes cluster handles storage differently, handles load balancers differently, handles a bunch of stuff differently, handles just how do you manage your machines that you physically have. All of these things are just kind of dealt with for you and will pose a cost. So they're rightfully very angry. I have nothing more to say about that. That leads so well into this because this is what they need. Being able to see these all in CloudWatch. Now, they need a better dashboard than just CloudWatch, but having them in CloudWatch is amazing that you can have a central point for these. It was the first thing in my AWS news specifically because of that. Because the other thing with I understand why quotas exist and why they're there. And quotas is probably one of the harder things that you have to start dealing with when you start to scale. you start to scale, and all of a sudden you realize that, oh, we have a new AWS account, and guess what? They won't give us the quotas. So you actually have to go warm the AWS account. You start a new AWS account to start scaling onto, because again, you shard your AWS accounts. And what you end up needing to do is you need to then, not only do you shard your AWS accounts, but you need to start them ahead of time, put a little bit of workload in there, pay on it for a little bit, so that you can then increase the quota, because you can't increase the quota immediately, because they'll be like, no, you're not going to pay for that. You're just, and so yeah, anyways, quota management is hard. I feel for the clouds. Now it feels like GCP handled it really poorly, because that should be an automatically reverse. Just, they should press the button, automatically reverse. I don't know if there's, obviously I'm only seeing one side of the story there, and I haven't researched into it if there's a second side to that story. Like, were they 5 months overdue on their bill? I don't know. I'm assuming not. All right, let's move on. Get away. All right, so CloudWatch now supports cross. I actually think we missed this preview. We missed one thing in Azure really quickly. Public preview of ingest events from Azure Event Hubs to Azure Monitor Logs. We'll move on to AWS now. Just wanted to point that out. I think this is pretty cool that you can now ingest data directly from an event hub to a log analysis workspace. So if you're trying to machine learn on those logs, if you're trying to understand your logs a little bit better, especially as you get more and more logs and don't want to pay for something like Datadog, this seems really useful. I don't know the price of it. I don't know the cost. So maybe it's just as expensive as Datadog, but Datadog is expensive. So I don't know. Other than this, the other big news that I saw here was announcing DynamoDB Local version 2.0. Now, I think DynamoDB Local is one of the cool things that AWS has over some of the other competing clouds. It allows you to run locally and have like a mirrored API so that you can debug locally and do all of those things. So the version 2.0 seems to be really cool, bringing a lot of stuff for Java developers, along with like Spring Boot 3 frameworks and Framework 6. A lot of extra things that it's going to support, and it's going to support the newer versions of DynamoDB as well. So I thought that that was pretty cool. Obviously, the other thing we've already talked kind of lightly about it was this new hands-on course for generative AI with large language models that they're pushing. So if you're trying to learn more about it, I'm going to start it. We'll see how interesting and useful it is. It is free to enroll, so if that's something you want to do, go check it out. Other than that, they had a bunch of little things. We're going to do rapid fire so we can talk about some of the interesting stuff. AWS System Manager parameter store increased API throughput limit. So basically there was a throughput limit. I think it got 10x. So I think it went from 10,000 transactions per second to, or 1,000 transactions per second to 10,000 oh no, it was 3,000. It went from 3,000 to 10,000. So pretty big increase, not quite 10x, but you know, you're getting your 3.1x there. Pretty big increase if you're using the parameter store, and we're starting to hit that increase. These are the types of things here that could cause you to shard accounts. Let's say your system requires 20,000 transactions per second. You need 2 accounts to handle that. I'm not saying it's the best solution, and maybe you can architect your design not to hit those limits, but if you are using that and you do hit those limits, the only solution is to shard your account. I've had people question me why. There are hard limits per account, and you just, that's it. If you're using it and you don't want to change your architecture, that's how you handle it. There's actually a total number of VPS, the virtual private networks, VPN. My goodness, VPCs, virtual private clouds, which are their private networks. There's a maximum number of VPCs that you'll hit. So if you isolate using VPCs per customer or things like that, it's very easy to actually hit the max number of VPCs. So it's not even like you can actually get away from it either. There are times when you just have to scale with accounts. All right. So AWS glue crawlers now support Apache Iceberg tables. So Apache Iceberg table is notoriously a data format, a table format for data lakes that is used. Apache Iceberg is pretty big in that. And so basically, AWS glue crawlers can now look at these tables in S3 paths and crawl over them for the data that you're looking for. So if you're using Apache Iceberg, you can now use AWS glue crawlers. I think it's niche, but I think it's useful for people that would use that. AWS Code Build now supports GitHub Actions. Glue crawlers sound like an enemy in a video game. Good point. Good point. AWS Code Build now supports GitHub Actions. So if you've been using Code Build or Actions, they've now married the two together so that you can have a fully managed continuous integration service for all of your AWS needs. This is pretty nice because a lot of people use GitHub and GitHub Actions are there available to them. And so making them easier to work together makes sense. Makes sense. AWS EKS increased pod density limits for Windows containers. Again, I said this is maybe a little more nuanced. It's interesting, but I didn't understand this. I didn't realize how few Windows pods, and again, I don't know what Windows pods even is because to me, a container is a Linux construct because it's C groups and namespaces. I need to learn more about these myself, but it said by up to 16x, and then they state that the new maximum limit is 250 pods, which is amazingly fewer than on Linux, because on Linux, most distros are up to at least 500 pods per node. And at that point, you're starting to really thrash the PIDs. You get some PID thrashing, and that's no good. And so, like, with this update, 16x, that's over an order of magnitude. So we're talking about, like, they were able to support, like, 20 pods. 20 pods. I don't know what they were doing, but you can support a whole lot more. So if you're wanting to break up your use bigger instances and break them up a little bit more fine-grained, you can now. You can now. And the last thing is AWS config, something we've talked about. They keep adding to, now supports 16 new resource types. I didn't see any really big ones except for the virtual router and virtual gateway of their app mesh, which seems really convenient to me. There was some stuff around their video streams and access points that maybe are a little bit more useful to other people, not to me personally. But yeah, they're adding and expanding it. Not much more to say there. I feel like that was a marathon. That was a marathon. I was trying to go through those quickly. They weren't super exciting, but I think they're useful if you had the need, if you had the use. Let's talk about software engineering news. This first one I have mixed feelings about. We've seen a lot. You know what? I have a piece of news that is missing. Let me find it really quickly. It's something that I know happened. Now, yeah. Give me just a second. I apologize. I was supposed to have this already. This is my job. Not really my job, but Sorry. All right. All right. I got it up now. All right. So let's sorry about that. Just wanted to make sure I had all of it because I did some digging into it. Um yeah, so I did some digging into it. Now, we all know Red Hats. We talked about Red Hat, and I was actually talking to Russell, and I think that there was a really good point. So I've always said that I could see both sides of some of these arguments, like Red Hats, where it's like, well, they actually pay a lot of people to do a lot of good work. And so if they would be open with their finances and how much the leadership and shareholders make from Red Hat, which gets murky with IBM. I realize IBM makes it more murky with how much money they're actually making. But if they were more open with that, I think more people would get behind, hey, we're making it closed source because we have to pay our engineers. So, that being said, I think that's a really good statement. Those companies that want to do that, that are open source like that, and want to make things harder for other people to use, I think it's a really good way of doing it, is opening what you make and showing it off. All right, so that being said, there's some interesting news in the open source world. The first thing has nothing to do with that, but LXD is now under Canonical. So Canonical is the makers of Ubuntu. They do a lot of stuff with open source, just like OpenSUSE and Red Hat, and so at first my knee-jerk reaction was like, ooh, I don't appreciate this, but I did some digging into it, and the fact is, Canonical is pretty much the sole developers on it. I want to say 90% of the code contributed, the work and the effort is from Canonical themselves. And they're not changing any of the licensing or anything like that. They're just bringing it under Canonical rule, effectively. And Canonical is pretty good about having a community that they talk with and do whatnot with. I actually think that, the big difference between Canonical and Red Hat is that Canonical actually has an open source community that they sometimes really annoy. They really make them angry, but it's because they have a community that they actually work with. So, I don't know how I feel about this. How do you guys feel about this? How do you guys feel about them bringing LXD into the Canonical area? It's really a change of management from the Linux containers. The Linux containers statement was that while the team behind Linux containers regret the decision and will be missing, this isn't fully true. They're saying that this isn't fully true because the creator and maintainer and the main contributor to it was Canonical. So the team behind Linux container is Canonical, which I'm sure that Canonical doesn't regret the decision. But I'm thinking that they're saying the rest of the community. That's my understanding of that statement. Yeah, so I don't know how I feel about this one, though. It's a weird one for Canonical to do that, to be honest. I think maybe it's to simplify their engineering. You have too many things that are spread out. That would be my assumption, is simplifying of engineering and engineering management, but I don't know. I don't have any insight. So that happened. The next thing is this. I wanted to talk about it a little bit. SourceGraph is no longer open source. So you can go see here. SourceGraph is no longer GitHub.com. SourceGraph is no longer open source. I believe I think you're right that the people behind Linux containers, but Linux containers is not the LXD project. The LXD project has been canonical. So I think you're right. I think you're right, but I'm not sure why this is a big problem. I guess why they regret the decision. I know that LXD works with it. But yeah, I don't know. Yes, you're probably correct. That is, I mean, we're on linuxcontainers.org. This is them talking about it, so so SourceGraph is basically a way to search through code and is really cool. And basically it's not open source anymore. You can go to SourceGraph. You can check here. There is no open source licensing. Unknown licenses found. You can see here. Even the non-enterprise one is the enterprise one. So they've changed it. They have removed all Apache 2, which is what it was originally under. Now there's a lot of reactions. I'm just covering the news. I'm not even going to dig into this one a whole lot. The one thing that I have to say is SourceGraph's CEO did come through and kind of save the day. SourceGraph CEO here. SourceGraph is now two separate products. Code Search and Kodi are Code AI. Kodi remains open source, Apache 2 in the client's Kodi directory in the repository, and we're extracting that to a separate 100% open source repository soon. So that is really good news because I know a lot of us liked Kodi. And so if you go in here and look into clients, let's go up here and look at clients and then look at Kodi. We'll just go Kodi here. But you can see that it has its own license, and that is Apache 2 that covers everything in it. So a lot of people were talking about SourceGraph, and I think it's really good that they move this out of the repository so to avoid the confusion and the licensing issues. I think that this is a really good move and a nice clarification. All right, so our licensing principle remains to charge companies while making tools for individual devs open source. Very few individual devs or companies use the limited feature open source variant of Code Search, so we decided to remove it. Okay, I'm going to say something controversial here, but actively maintaining and supporting a community for open source is a lot of work. If no one's using the open source project, it's a lot of work to actually maintain that as an open source project, because to actively do it and to do it well, that means all of your issues and all of your feature tracking and all of your things like that have to be open source. It means that if you're wanting to have a separate enterprise version, that you have to have some sort of build system that compiles the two things together, because the open source is kind of the base and the enterprise is the base on top. And if no one is using it, it's a lot of extra work and a lot of extra things. So I get this. If no one is using it, I don't see the point in actually supporting it. Usage of SourceGraph's Code Search was even more skewed towards our official non-open source build than the other smaller sections like blah, 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 blah. You can see more of an explanation here. I am not fully defending this. I am not fully defending one way or another. I am merely trying to help people see that there's two sides of every coin. Also, they pay engineers to make cool stuff, and if you want them to continue that, they have to make money. Now, I think as an open source company, you should open your book. You don't have to completely open them. You don't have to say how much everybody is getting paid, but I bet you that SourceGraph is probably losing money. And this might be, would we like them to continue making Kodi? Well, maybe they need to make money. So, anyways. Also, I also feel this. Maintaining an open source project that nobody uses, it's extra work to maintain it as open source. All right. And you can use source graph code search for free on public repos, and on a free tier on private code, as an individual. Now, as Russell is pointing out, they say Kodi will be free for personal use forever. However, we've seen AI companies make claims that are rescinded later on. Looking at you, OpenAI. That's true. The thing is, we can only go off of their past history. And I think this is why it's so important to be crystal clear and apparent when making changes, because you're going to be judged off of your reputation. I don't, it's free and open source right now, which means it's fantastic. We can fork it. If they decide eventually to make Kodi closed source, we can fork it. And so, like, I'm not as upset about that. Like, changing it to not open source, it doesn't bother me as much, because if we really care that much, we can fork it. Look at OpenSearch. That's a fork. Look at Grafana. Grafana is a fork. Think about that. Did you realize that? Yeah, it's a fork of another project called Kibana. So that doesn't bother me as much, but we can judge these companies on their past ways of how they've handled this. Not commenting on how they've handled this so far, whether it was a good way or a bad way. I do think that the best way to handle these changes as you go through them is to be as clear and open as you can, so you don't hurt that trust. Because the more times you do it, I'm looking at you, Red Hat, the less people will trust you. You destroyed CentOS on a moment's notice. You then destroyed, or tried to destroy, Alma Linux and Rocky, which, again, I think that they're going to close the loopholes that they're using right now. Again, make a clear case for it. Make an open case for it. I think we can all stand behind it. But if you make a closed decision without including the community that is backing you, then it's going to really hurt. I don't know. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm making a ton of people angry with that, or helping people reason about. I don't know. I've been on both sides, so open source is hard. So they have committed to keeping Kodi open source. I'm going to release this. They have committed to that. Let's hold their feet to the fire on that one. Let's do it. All right. In other Bay Area news, Russell destroyed Evernote. Russell was the last thread. Evernote effectively laid off all their staff and are relocating to Europe. I'm interested to see how this goes. Europeans obviously have plenty of fantastic engineers, know plenty of them myself, from working at SUSE. That's not a problem. The problem is you let go of your staff that knows how to support your big, complex system now. Evernote's been around for years and years and years, and I can't help but believe they have some technical debt that they're sitting on, some systems that are proprietary to them that they're sitting on. So I'm going to see how hiring a brand new staff, and how that works, how many hiccups that they're going to have. Yeah. The inbox is Apple, Russell, for you. So you're going to cancel your Apple subscription? It would shock me. It would shock me if you had an Apple subscription to anything. That would shock me to the core. I feel like me having an M1 Mac Mini for my streaming PC is far more Apple friendly than you. And that's the only thing Apple I have. So I do like it as a streaming PC, though. Just gonna say that it's nice. Now, this isn't the only bad news for the Bay Area. Now, I have to wonder, we had talked about how Chicago isn't the nicest city, and that KubeCon is going to be in Chicago. And, there's some concerns about you want to protect the safety of the people that are going to your conference. And now, both Meta and Red Hat haven't talked about why specifically they canceled. But the Bay Area hasn't been the nicest place. It's pretty rampant with crime, and it's kind of dirty if you go. I go every once in a while. And it's not the nicest place. And another thing that has happened is Meta and Red Hat has canceled their events set for San Francisco. Now, this is a downtown San Francisco, and I don't know if that's played a part in it. I don't know why they decided to cancel their events there. They haven't actually said. They just said that they were canceling them. And Red Hat actually canceled its 2025 and 2026 events as well. Basically saying that they're not going to hold them in downtown San Francisco anymore. Now, I don't know why. Is it money? Not sure. Yeah, San Fran is set to be a ghost town. I agree, Weeby Wizard. I agree, Weeby Wizard. I am obviously not a predictor of the future. I'm not a wizard, unlike you. So it's very hard for me to see in the future. But more and more, yeah. So that's pretty much it for the Bay Area news that we had. Those things happened, but yeah, Evernote leaves and then they're canceled. Now it does say that their 2028 and 2030 they still plan to hold in San Francisco, but I don't know of anybody planning a conference in 2028 and 2030. I didn't know companies actually planned them out that far in advance, but I guess they are. So yeah. All right. Well, further on the news, remember, for all of those that you knew, this is our news segment. We do news once a week. Make sure to bring your own things. I don't catch everything. We need to actually work on my thing that alerts me to news articles because I'd like to put some AI against it so that we can find all of the news articles and it's not just me. So remember, if you find something, make sure to bring it. We cover software, software in general, security, cloud, and open source. So make sure to bring it and release it on us all so that we can all learn together. Now, I do know that we do have pretty strict link posting in chat right now. So unless you're a common viewer, you'll need to be dropping that in the Discord. So yeah. All right, let's talk about the last two things. There is a brand new OS, the first of its kind. China releases its first open source computer operating system. Now, I got excited about this because I thought it was going to be something different, but it's a repackaging of Linux. So it's just another Ubuntu Red Hat competitor as far as I can see. I haven't actually run OpenKillian. I think it's Killian. I don't really know how to pronounce it. If my Mandarin was better, and by better I mean any at all, I might know how to pronounce it a little bit better, but I'm going with OpenKillian. So OpenKillian is another distribution of Linux. Yeah, I guess they had about 4,000 developers working on it, and we'll see if it becomes a big player in it. Kaylin? So you're saying it like Kaylin? My way of saying it's so much more fun. Highland? Again, mine is so much more fun. Oh, like Kylan. Kylan. Okay, I got it. Kylan. Kylan. Okay, cool. Kylan. That I would say sounds right, but I don't know. Oh, true. It is Cobra Kai, isn't it? It is Cobra Kai. Netflix taught us something. That was Netflix, right? Okay, so they released it. I'm interested to see what they do with it because honestly, getting some more perspective on what an operating system should do or shouldn't do, we'll see. We'll see if they do anything really interesting with it, or if it's just going to be another repackaging of Debian or whatnot. I haven't used it at all. I was going to say a ton, but I haven't used it at all. But yeah, I'm interested to see that. So Kylan, I guess, makes sense. All right. Open Kylan. Perfect. Kylan, not Kyland. All right. Now, there is some debate. There is some debate about AI limiting its public access. Now, all I can tell you is we have seen things like the public archives go down by something that looks like machine learning. 256 machines, that's a weird number to all of a sudden IP addresses start pounding a service into the ground. It's interesting that Twitter had to do this for a couple of days. It's interesting that places like oh crap, what is it called? Reddit have also had to start doing things around this. Is AI going to destroy the public web as we know it? Will everybody have to protect themselves under these rate limits to keep people's AI training from destroying them? Like, I think that would be a huge shame. I'm bringing this up as part of the news, and I know that there's speculation that the Twitter thing didn't pass the smell test. You know, I don't want to speculate on that because there's so much that goes into that. You can manipulate the public information that you have either way that you want it to go. You could force it to the amount of information we were given and the amount of specs we were given was effectively zero. And so you could say it doesn't pass the smell test because we don't have this data. But the fact is, that doesn't mean that that data didn't exist or it wasn't true. So I don't really want to speculate on that because I don't have the data. The only data I do have is we've seen this happen before, especially if you've been on following the news with me. We've seen sites go down because 256 machines spin up and bring it down from the number of requests that they offer. And my question to you is that going to bring down the public web? Is that going to no longer be the case that you can go and access the site as much as you want? Are there going to be limits like 200 requests for unauthenticated people, which is a lot of requests? I don't know. I don't go to any website 250 times, and not even Google in a day. Whew. So anyways, I thought that was an interesting thing that maybe we need to follow. We need to follow these instances where things go down and maybe are caused by that. Maybe start a tracker or something. I don't know. All right, that was it for my news. Did you guys see anything? Do you want to talk about this? The AI-driven crackdown on the web. Every time you post a blog, include a logical fallacy to ruin model inputs. Do you know what? Do you know what you should do? All right, this is. I need to create this. This is an application. This is an application we're creating later this year. It is going to put in hidden characters in your typing. So characters you can't see, but exist. And it's just going to automatically do it for you so that so that AIs get trained on garbage that looks correct. Oh, that is what we're doing. Later in the Null News, as Merrick Counts becomes public enemy #1 of AI companies. Oh, So, but on a serious note, did you guys see anything in the news that I missed? Anything big? We got the rate limiting from Russell. Thank you for posting that. Do be warned, if you do check out Russell's link, there is some strong cursing, probably deserved by Google, if everything they say holds to be true. That is pretty terrifying. And that is how a CNI works. Also, horses have 5 legs and are the second largest aquatic mammal. That's pretty fantastic. That's pretty fantastic. I actually think that this goes to how LLMs, and this is why my video that I need to release on it is so important, is because people don't understand how these things work and how they don't actually have a discerning thought. So a lot of times, and you know, maybe not all humans have this, but a lot of times you read stuff, and this is, I don't know, my YouTube video on it didn't do very well. I worked pretty hard on it, but it's my, did AWS move to monoliths? It was, my attempt there was to have people, help people read stuff with that discerning thought, which is what AIs can't do. They are trained on X, they produce Y, period. They don't have a thought process that goes behind it. And this is what I really wanted to help encourage people. Now, maybe I didn't do a good job of it. Again, it's not widely watched. But that was kind of my goal behind it, because I felt like too many people read that blog post and took the wrong thing away from it. And yeah, that's, you know, us as a human can read, you know, yeah, that's how our CNI works. And they'd be like, oh, he's just joking around with the horses have 5 legs and whatnot. But if an AI was trained on it, it would think horses had 5 legs and we're the second largest aquatic mammal, or have a point on it. It wouldn't think it. On contrary, not contrary news, but you know what? At the end of this, at the end of July, oh, cool! You saw a YouTube video on those fancy new cooling chips from Airjet. Not top. Can you? I know you can't post a link, Weeby Wizard. I will grant you that privilege soon. You've been here for a little while now. But if you want to just like type out the YouTube channel that you saw that on, I think that sounds pretty cool. The cooling chips are pretty awesome. I think I said coding chips, but don't post a link, because I have a rogue AI that watches my feed, and it gets really ban happy, and I apologize in advance, but Nightbot likes to slap you with a silence. It's not in my control. It's not in my control. It's not in my control. It's literally not in my control. I need to write my own, because I don't like the moderation tools given to me by Nightbot. I wish that like it would let me review the link and then like let it through or not from, you know, not known sources. But no, it doesn't give me that ability. It just says, "Hey, look, we're gonna silence the person and delete everything they've typed in chat. So don't do it." I'm warning you. I have no control over it. It's not me. It's not you either. It's Nightbot. But yeah, anytime, every Sunday, I do these news things. So if you're new to the news, please bring articles if you see them, and we'll source them as a community. You can post them in Discord if you want to give me time to review them. I can cover them more in depth. If you just bring them, I will cover them the best that I can as I'm going. But I do try to review and actually dig into, like I did with the source graph, find both sides of the argument, find as many articles on it as I can, and try to correlate the things together, like I did with the AWS machine learning class that just came out. So yeah. Oh, it was a Linus Tech Tip video. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. thanks everybody for joining these and making them awesome. I know that we've been doing some pretty exciting stuff with the stream. I hope that you guys have been liking the programming portions of these streams as well. I know that we literally yesterday got this deployed, which was pretty cool. I'm excited later this month when we release Null Cloud News in the cloud section. Totally not biased or anything. Don't try to log in or sign up because it's broken. It's not really broken, but it's purposefully broken because the backend doesn't work. It doesn't work. But it does work. It's not going to let you do you things because it needs a few extra things, few extra features before it's ready for prime time. Not going to be ready for prime time, but it's going to be ready for educational time, hopefully by the end of this month. Yeah, we'll release some news segments on it. So yeah, we've been coding on it, and that's all done with Argo CD and some open source tools like K0s, and we have an operator that actually deploys the workloads. It's pretty cool. I like it. I am working on a paper. I'm actually releasing a paper on my thoughts on auto infrastructure or infrastructureless clouds. So I think that will be pretty cool. That kind of describes the goal of the Null Cloud as not only an educational piece for people to learn from, but also infrastructure as code sucks. It sucks because we don't want to do it. We don't want to do infrastructure. We don't want to do configuration. We want to write code that just kind of magically works and is available to people. And that's what we're doing. So yeah, anyways. All right. Well, that's it for me today. If you guys don't have anything else, thanks for the links, both of you, Russell and Weeby Wizard. I appreciate it. I will be streaming again on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm going to actually try to stream in the morning. I'll see if I can't wake up enough to stream before work. That will be a little bit easier for the people in Europe. So anyways, see y'all, and thanks for joining.